Hello and welcome back to Shanti Fine Arts. Today's episode is again dedicated to Durga Puja. Those who has watched the last episode would know that I am in my full swing Durga Puja mode, and this is going to be another episode dedicated to the same experiment. This time of the year in India is marked by clear, bright blue skies and fluffy white clouds, gentle weather, and all over beautiful surroundings. Adding to the beauty of it all, this is a season of lotuses, which are an integral part of the Durga Puja rituals as well. So today's episode is dedicated to the lotus. I am working on watercolors today and will walk you step by step on how to paint a lotus with watercolors. Starting off, I am wetting my entire paper around the subject, which is the lotus and the leaves. I am leaving those not watered at all, not completely dry. The subject areas are completely dry. Rest of the paper I am wetting generously with water and making sure they stay wet, not like globs of water, but they have a very matte sheen on them. And then I am coming back with two blues, cerulean and ultramarine on the top and cerulean at the bottom of the painting, and trying to build a gradient from dark to light. Now I will apologize that I have not been able to build the best gradient, not the best smoothest surface. I feel like I should have used a bigger brush to get the blended effect after all. But anyways, you will get the idea of what I am doing here. Once I build the gradient, I am using a piece of clean cloth, and dabbing off some of the paint of the gradient while the blues are still wet, to create the illusion of clouds behind the lotus. And this is a very, very easy way to paint or create clouds with watercolor, as you can see. And try it out. I'm sure you will find it very interesting. And you can add much more details around the clouds and inside the clouds and make it even more prominent. But you can just start off with building clouds by just dabbing off some paint off the paper while it is still wet. Now, to start off with the lotuses, I will work throughout, as you will see, one petal at a time. And with watercolor, I think sometimes this is the best approach when you are painting realistically and your subject is big enough and can be divided into parts. This is because watercolors, once dry, although it is not like permanent, but it is hard to get different shades and lift off paint if you want to from different areas. So I am working on almost like one petal at a time, and this time I have not used any masking fluid, but moving forward I would suggest that use some masking fluids to mask off your lotus in the first when you're building the clouds. That way you will be able to be more messy and be able to build a better gradient and a more better, smoother background, and not have these brush strokes that I have all over the place. Also on the body of the lotus petals, if you use the masking fluid sparingly, you would get like a brighter highlights where you can show off the white of the paper and mask it off and just remove it at the very end of the painting. But in my case, in this particular painting, I have used no masking fluid at all. As you can see, I am working one petal at a time. And depending on the angle of the camera, the petals are darker at the top and bottom and kind of lighter in the middle. That's the general rule. However, obviously there is a lot more light and shades and various shades of pink in between. And you will see that I will incorporate a lot of purple for the darker shadow areas, because when the shadow areas hit the purple, hit the lotus, it kind of makes it look purple on the pink. So to give the best realistic look, use a lot of purple. For some reason, the colors on this painting are looking very dull and very muddy, The purples are looking very muddy, but in reality, in the actual painting, it's looking much better, much brighter. So just follow the general rule and try to imagine that this is not a muddy violet, muddy purple, and that is the case. Now I'm blocking the general area of the buds and the leaves with some yellow and some green. I am trying to build a gradient where I have more yellows on the lighter areas and more greens on the darker areas. And what I generally do to build a gradient is wet the entire area and then just drop paints from top to bottom and bottom to top, and then let them merge and create the gradient by themselves at the first, and then I would add in more details step by step. So let me go back to the lotus now and add in more detail on the petals. I'm kind of creating the illusion of rays that you generally see on the petal. I don't know whether they're called rays. For me, that's the best term I can say. Those are the markings, and I am sometimes adding more color to paint them, and sometimes I'm also wetting the paper and lifting off some color to paint them. And you will see at the very end I will bring back some or rather I will use some white ink to make the white areas really white. This is where I was mentioning that using masking fluid at the very beginning would have allowed me not to use any ink at all. Not that I have anything against inks, and I use ink on my watercolor all the time at the very end, so to pop up all the highlights or real darks. Like I use mostly black and white inks. They kind of give a vibrancy, and inks are permanent, so even on top of, and they're also opaque, so on top of watercolors they will show, and even if you wet it later, once it's dry, it will not lift off. So that's kind of the advantage of inks. If you want an opaque, lighter area on top of a darker watercolor area, with watercolor it might be difficult, but with ink it makes it much easier. I am constantly playing with the shadows, lights and darks here, trying to make the best out of contrast, because as you would know in my earlier paintings, no matter what subject I'm painting, whether it's big, small, human, flowers, birds, anything I'm painting, I always believe in hyping up the contrast. That is what gives your painting the best realistic look and a very dramatic look that would catch the viewer's attention, and not only catch the viewer's attention, direct the eyes of the viewer where you want them to see. So as you see, I'm kind of building a gradient on the stalk of the lotus as well, where I want the bottom to be light and the top to be dark and the middle to be a brighter yellow and the sides to be a darker green. So I am adding dark paint first, then I'm coming back and lifting off some of it, and then adding a little bit of yellow. I have also used a smidge of oranges and reds here in certain areas of the stem to make sure the shadows and the colors are reflected very realistically. And I'm going back and forth between the petals of the leaves and the the petals of the flower and the leaves, and adding shadows, adding details here and there, and trying to improve the general look of the painting. As for the leaves, I have first created the gradient, like I said, yellow on the top and green on the bottom, and then I have come back while the paint is still wet and it's mixing with each other. Then I've come back with the darker green and created the rays of veins, or the veins of the leaves that you see with a darker shade of green. And in the leaves I have not used any ink at all. It's all watercolor. And once the lotus is completely done, I have hyped up the blue around the lotus just to create a better contrast between the lotus and its surroundings. And like I said, in this particular painting, I could not get the background as smooth as I wanted to be. Probably I should have given it more time and patience and thought, but I don't know, somehow I was very rushed that morning, and that's just what happens when you rush through your paintings. And do not forget to use some ink if you need to bring out your brightest highlights. And once again, that would help in hyping up the contrast, which I am a big fan of. Hyping up the contrast, I can never get enough of that. Darks should be really dark, lights should be really light, and that's how everything looks realistic and beautiful. And I've already mentioned how I have done the leaves, and also apart from the veins of the leaves, I have made some areas darker than the other. Then again, that creates the variety and the contrast and darks and lights and the eye-catching factor in a painting. So that's more or less about how I painted the leaves and the lotus. I hope you find this enormously helpful, and I hope some of you understand my festive mood and helps you get into your festive mood and celebrate it as an artist, being an artist in every mode of life as well. Let me know your thoughts and ideas and opinions in the comments. And do not forget to hit the subscribe button, because that is the best way to keep in touch with what I'm currently working on and what is coming up. As you know, I post videos every Wednesday and Friday, and sometimes on weekends as well. So stay tuned for more of Durga Puja and other festivals and general tutorials. And let me know what you would like to see more of and what you like. And if you do not like something, do not hesitate to let me know, because if you do not tell me, I won't come to know, and then I would never improve. And the entire idea of me being on YouTube is to share our learning process. You learn something from me, I learn something from you, and we grow together in our art world. And there we come to the end of the painting. Thank you for watching.